Welcome to the Life After Sugar podcast, the podcast that's not just about sugar, but about your relationship with it and also with food and especially with yourself. So if you want to discover your life after sugar and hear inspiring stories from all kinds of people who also cut out sugar in their way, at their pace, for their own reasons, this is the podcast for you. Because when you take away the sugar, you can finally discover the real sweetness in your life. I'm your host, Netta Gorman, and today I'm talking with Dr. Michael Roizen, who is an American doctor who specializes in anti-aging. He actually became famous for developing the real age concept that he's going to be talking about in this episode, and we'll be talking about the connection between sugar and aging. Dr. Roizen has authored or co-authored 5 #1 New York Times bestsellers, so I'm very flattered that he agreed to talk to me on this podcast, and we'll get to our chat in just a minute. First, I wanted to point you to a few free resources that I have for you. And if you're an intermittent faster, then I have 5 tips for you to help you get rid of cravings that may be getting in the way of you living your easy and natural intermittent fasting lifestyle. Go to aftersugarclub.com and download my 5 tips there. And if this is your first time here, welcome. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so that it appears magically in your podcast player every Sunday. And if you've listened to several episodes before and you haven't yet left a review, could I ask you to scroll down, please, and rate the podcast and leave a lovely review to tell me how this podcast is helping you in your life after sugar. Has it inspired you to reduce sugar? Has it made you think about sugar a little bit differently? Let me know. I love reading your reviews. Thank you. All right, so here's my chat about aging and sugar with Dr. Michael Roizen. So I'm talking today with Dr. Michael Roizen. Nice to see you. And can you tell us a little bit about your background?
It's great to see you.
Thank you.
So I suppose my background, I'm both a physician and that's my main background as a physician, and I do write books as well and develop apps. So I've developed only 2 real concepts, which is the real age concept, that your calendar age and your real age, your physiologic age, can be different. Those came about because of my background in both internal medicine and anesthesia and trying to motivate patients to get younger in the 2 weeks surrounding their surgery because it made such a big difference in their outcome. So that was started at UC when I was at University of California, San Francisco, and was co-running cardiovascular anesthesia.
Wow.
The new concept is called the Great Age Reboot, which is, although we've been able to delay aging, and we in 1998 said that 60 would be the new 40, or could be, and it has been. That is, when your calendar age is 60, your real age can be 40, that your risk of death and disability. Now we think 90 can be the new 40, but not by slowing aging, but by rebooting yourself back based on the 14 areas of science. And one of those strongly relates to, in fact, it relates to protein malformation, dysformation, wrong proteins being secreted. But one of the strong things is sugar. So when sugar gets on a protein, it, what we call, glycosylates it. And that sometimes, a lot of times, makes it function less well. So, for example, hemoglobin A1C is just hemoglobin with a sugar in the A1C position. And what does that do to that hemoglobin, just a protein whose job is to deliver oxygen? It makes it less able to unload its oxygen to tissues, why we have, or one of the major hypotheses on why diabetics get ulcer disease, get kidney disease, get heart disease, atherosclerosis, and get dementia. It does that with another protein in the sugar does that with the protein in that joins cells. So you've got two cells in your lining your arteries that are stuck together, and there's a grout protein, a phosphokinase 3, between them. And when sugar gets on that, it weakens that grout, and then blood pressure comes down, causes a little rip. You plaster it over with LDL cholesterol. That's how we get atherosclerosis. So why sugar is so bad is because it disrupts, one of the reasons is at least it disrupts normal protein function.
Wow, wow. And that is news to me. I mean, we have talked about it before, you and I, but I mean, when I first cut sugar, that was the farthest thing from my mind. What sugar has to do with proteins and with aging. It's like, why doesn't everyone talk about this more?
Um, Well, you've got to define that, right? You would know more about human behavior than I think. I try and motivate people by educating them and by telling them the rationale behind it. And I don't know that it's easier to say stay away from white stuff, including anything with sugar, added syrups, or simple carbs in it. That's the do it. But then you got, and people don't do it, right? So you've got to motivate them. And that's where I try and get behind the scenes and say, this is really why you should do it. There is a rationale. And it makes a huge difference because it makes a difference in the rate of aging of your body, your rates of disability. You know, I'm going to give you another one, if you will, and I'm talking too much, so forgive me, Netta. But
No
in other
worries.
words, when you get up in the morning and you're young, you don't feel as stiff. But when you get older, you feel stiff, and that some of that is the glycosylation of your cartilage, of the connective tissue you have that joins things, and it gets sugar on it and causes a little, if you will, either binding or irritation or abnormality, and that stiffness, that is the lack of flexibility of the proteins in your cartilage. And so you've glycosylated it. So it is the less sugar you have at all times. And the good news is you keep remaking your cells. The less sugar you have at all times, the less aging, the less you will feel the effects of our getting old, the less chronic disease you'll have.
Wow. Yeah. And that has been my personal experience. I remember back in 2015 when I first cut sugar, and within a few weeks, I'd even say a few days, but let's say within a few weeks, I felt that my movements were more supple, that my joints were moving like they used to more. I wasn't getting up and creaking in the morning. And yeah, it feels like I'm younger now at 52 than I was at 45.
Well, I'll bet if we did the real age test on you between those two ages, you would. Nutrition is the second greatest ager. Stress is the greatest ager. And having friends, I'm actually going to consider you a friend now, Netta, because I mean, you're so, we, we should say you did a pre-interview I think a week ago or so, and I felt an immediate kinship because, so I hope you'll be a friend. But
Yes.
friends and your posse and purpose, I think our purposes are the same. That is to help people live younger, longer, and to tell them how much control they have over their rate of aging. So the control over rate of aging is immense. So by the time you're 50, so you're 52, by the time you're 50, at least 70% of your rate of aging and probably 85% of your rate of aging is due to your choices, not your genes, because you get to turn on or off your genes by your choices. So if you look at twins, the concordance of chronic disease between identical twins is only 3% at age 60, which means a huge amount of their rate of aging is due to their choices. So you get to, and I think both of us have a purpose of helping people make better choices to live younger, longer.
So, yeah, oh, definitely. So are you saying that, well, are you saying that aging is directly related to nutrition and directly related to sugar? And that obviously we can't stop time, but if we cut sugar, or at least vastly reduce forms of sugar, we
Yeah,
feel less old?
it's more than that. So in the Great Age Reboot and on our app, the Reboot Your Age app, there are 6 pillars. The first is stress management, and posse and purpose are two of the major things in that. And I do deep breathing, and there are all kinds of techniques, but the main are posse and purpose. The second most important, and I'll skip it and come back to it, is food choices, portion size, and time of eating. The third is physical activity, the 4 forms that make a difference to how long and well you live. The fourth is unforced errors, that is, not doing stupid stuff. The fifth is sleep and brain aging. And the sixth is supplements and small molecules. Um, and I think we had a discussion of that the last time. But the second, from the worst diet to the best diet, is a 27-year difference in the epidemiologic data. That is, you're either 13 years older than your calendar age or 14 years younger compared to the average person in Canada or the United States or in the developed world. And sugar is probably the most important of those, meaning avoiding increases in blood sugar that change the way your genes function and change the way your proteins function. But I want to say it isn't just slowing aging, it is because your choices turn on or off genes, it is maybe reversing aging. So let me go and we can talk about that, but let me give you the example. When you do physical activity, you turn on a small gene in your muscle, a gene in your muscle that makes a small protein, arisen. That arisen goes to your brain and releases brain-derived neurotrophic growth factor, which increases hippocampal size, meaning you're less likely to develop dementia. You're actually reversing your aging, your brain's age, by the increase in size by about 6 years, by just consistently stressing your muscles. So the point is, we're learning, and that's the whole point of the Great Age Reboot, to help people understand and plan for and think about what are they going to do when they're age 90 but functioning as you are now as a 40-year-old. Although you're 52, you're probably functioning probably as a 35-year-old or so.
Yeah, and
Um,
better,
and,
and better.
and, and that's because we get to reverse it, slow it, and then maybe if the animal data, and I think with an 80% probability, you're from Canada, so I can talk about shots on goal. We have 14 major shots on goal. And there's no defenseman. So one of them is likely to get in, and that means we'll be able to actually reboot ourselves. That's the principle. For at age 90, we'll function as a 40-year-old. Well, if you're functioning as a 40-year-old, you don't want to give up your podcast. You don't want to give up your joy of life or your purpose in life. You want to keep nurturing your posse, and you want to keep avoiding sugar.
Totally, totally. And it's like people imagine, and I would have imagined this before I cut sugar, that a life without sugar, which is not what life after sugar is all about. I say after sugar, not without, but all be that as it may, people imagine that I'd rather live a shorter life with sugar than a longer life without, because it sounds so joyless.
Well, this is not castor oil. This is joy. So we in our book, and I've got it right here. So this is the What to Eat When cookbook. The one before that is the principle is you should only do things you love that love you back. You wouldn't marry someone who is trying to kill you. You shouldn't eat food that's trying to kill you. So simple sugar, added syrup, simple carbs are trying to kill you. On the other hand, you can use what we call Roizen reduction, which is allulose, which prevents actually the rise in blood sugar, but gives you sweetness in early studies. We aren't the data aren't fully absorbed there with allulose, but in fact, by using some things like that, you can get all the joy of food. I love avocados. I love salmon. Those are things that love my body back. So why not enjoy those in, if you will, and I don't have to worry about not having a cupcake because I don't like cupcakes anymore. And in fact, our tastes change as we change it, and you can see that with if you've gone to skim milk from whole milk. If you then have whole milk again, it tastes yucky.
Yeah, and
Um,
vice versa.
so and that's the same with me having avoided sugar for so long.
Yeah, I totally get it. Me too. It's like, even a bit of fruit is overwhelmingly sweet for me now. And I used to be the world's biggest sweet tooth. So, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. Yeah.
No, I keep telling we have the co-author of the What to Eat When cookbook, who is our executive chef here, who's just absolutely wonderful, and I keep telling him to put less sweetness in the food because my I've gone away from enjoying sweetness, and in fact, it is unenjoyable now. So we adapt taste, but the key point is this is this is joy. This is sunshine. It's not castor oil. You want to do things you love that love you back. You may not like walking. I'm on my treadmill desk, so I'll show you that. Um, so you can see that I'm actually on a treadmill desk and could do this. And I love walking, but some people may not love it. One of my co-authors of the Great Age Reboot book is a guy named Albert Ratner, who's 95, and he hates walking, but he loves playing ping pong. So this is joy. Have him play ping pong and not walk, or play with his grandkids and not walk. I know this is distracting, so I'll turn it off.
No, it's fine. It's fine. And I totally get your point. And really, all of these things that you mentioned are forms of self-care, which I found women, especially mothers, even more so, have great difficulty with self-care, with eating food that loves them back, with doing activities that love them back, with just loving themselves, period. It's a big, big challenge.
Well, time is a lot of the challenge. And the key, I think one of the key concepts is that you won't be around to care for those you love if you don't care for yourself. And that's no place near better demonstrated than patients and caregivers with Alzheimer's disease. 50% of the caregivers die before the patient with the disease because they're so spending time with the person, they're so stressed by it that they don't take time for themselves. So you've got to take the time, you've got to gather your posse to help give you free moments so you can take time for yourself. And I
Yeah,
think that's a key. But it's also choosing food for yourself. Comfort food does not comfort your inside many times. On the other hand, you know, I'm going to expose some craziness. So, as you know, I don't eat till about 11:30, and if I had my druthers, I'd eat earlier and at 2 p.m. But because of the lifestyle in the United States, I eat my first meal at 11:30 and my second meal at 6 or 6:30, and I'm done by 7:30. So I eat in an 8-hour window at most. Um, but the point, and we can go into why that is later. But the point is, my first meal is often a salmon burger. It is. 5 days a week, at least a salmon burger. On weekends, it's an egg white veggie omelet. So it's getting, and I love those things. And what if I get hungry at 3 p.m.? Do I have in the afternoon? I'll have a salmon burger again, or something, or nuts. So I love those things. And so I can't remember the last time I've had a cookie or a hamburger. And a salmon burger, if you cook it right, tastes as good as a hamburger, better to me than a hamburger does.
Yeah, that's the key, isn't it? Is the foods that you love. I mean, people take it for granted, including a lot of nutritionists that have said to me, well, Netta, you should eat everything that you love. And I'm like, well, I do. But what they mean is you should also eat all the sweet things. And what they didn't sort of take time to ask me about was, what is it that you actually love to eat now? And it doesn't include the sweet things. They just assume it does. But these days, or for the last 7 years for me, sweet things are not what I love anymore. I just want to take a quick break to tell you about the After Sugar Club, which is where you can discover the real sweetness in your life. If you want to get rid of cravings without the need for willpower, and lose your extra weight, your aches and pains, and brain fog, and make your intermittent fasting lifestyle easy and natural, then the After Sugar Club is where you get guidance from me to let go of sugar so that you can get more energy and confidence and feel healthier in just 12 weeks. If you're busy in the day, but as soon as you sit down in the evening, you want to snack mindlessly, or if you eat when you're happy or sad or whatever emotions you're feeling, and deep down you know that cutting sugar is the answer, but, well, the fact is you love sugar, even though you know that you have an unhealthy relationship with it, then I can help you ditch sugar for good. How? I'll show you how in the After Sugar Club, where you'll get access to all the resources that I've created to go step by step to letting go of sugar in a sustainable way, without suffering and without feeling restricted. There's no diet mentality in the After Sugar Club. You'll also get access to our twice-monthly check-in calls on Zoom, as well as our lovely, friendly community to get support, encouragement, and accountability. Come check out everything that's included in the After Sugar Club at aftersugarclub.com and click on the green button, Join the Club.
And it may be that you don't want to go into this in this podcast, but what triggered your understanding, your joy in avoiding sugar?
Well, I only started cutting sugar because I was looking for a way to improve my slow digestion and my chronic constipation, and nothing else was working, not more fiber, not laxatives. It was horrible. I had problems for about 15 years with my digestion. What really helped was fermented foods and drinks that I make myself now, and digestive enzymes at the beginning and HCl. But I mean, it wasn't for weight loss, and it certainly wasn't because I'd read up about it. I lived it. I was absolutely amazed at what happened, not just to my body, but to my relationship with my life, my happiness level. And then I started asking myself why, and then reading up about it.
Yeah, so I get that same feeling. I do a fasting mimicking diet with just diced tomatoes, corn niblets, and onions and spices to taste in a soup. 36 ounces of diced tomatoes, 36 ounces of water, 12 ounces of corn niblets, 12 ounces of water, onions and spices to taste. Just that for 5 days. 750 calories after the Longo. You can he's got a proprietary food company that also sells it called Prolon that does foods that might have more variety, but this works fine. And I feel so good after that. And every month, because I do that 5 days. So I understand exactly how you feel. You feel it makes you feel it's you don't get the comfort of a potato instantly, but you get the joy for the whole month and for your body forever, if you will, from doing that.
Absolutely. And my sources of comfort are elsewhere now than in sugar. Yeah. So can we circle back to what you were saying about your eating in an 8-hour window, and why time restricted eating it also helps with aging or not
So
aging?
so the let me go to the 5 day 750 calories. Around day 3, I switched to being ketotic. Especially because I do aerobic exercising, so I do walking on the treadmill, etc., as well as weightlifting. And when you get ketotic, your body thinks you're in a survival mode and switches which genes are on or not to a survival mode. You stop growth and you go to survival. You're not releasing insulin or insulin growth factor much because you don't have much sugar. That actually resets every one of the aging biomarkers and gets you to start recycling old protein into new proteins. So what you're doing is getting rid of the misfolded proteins, the abnormal proteins, the old cells, the in fact the proteins that have been glycosylated. You're actually getting rid of those and recycling those. In the intermittent, in the 8 hours, you get into that sometime after the 14th hour as well, as long as you're not overweight. If you're overweight, it helps you lose weight. But what people find is they sleep better, they have more energy, and they lose their hunger at night if they do the 8 hours. So it works well for me. One, I'm not hungry at night. Two, I have more energy all day. And three, I sleep well. So, if you will, it's a form of getting a little ketosis, getting a little of that recycling. I really believe in the 5 day process is even better, but I do both of them. The data on the 5 day Volta Longo fasting mimicking diet is very much more solid than the 8 hour a day thing, but still needs more replication, I think, by others. But in any case, what I've noticed, and I've been doing it, I think his first paper came out in 2017, July. Around then, I noticed it. I had him on my podcast immediately. I called him up and said, when I read the paper, I am a science nerd, unfortunately. I looked at the data and I thought it was solid enough that I immediately started it. So, what's this? This is 5 years, little more than 5.5 years of every month I've done this. And I circle on my calendar, I've got a calendar that I circle the 5 days that month. And in addition, I try and start it on a Friday. Why? Because I do my hard exercise days are Saturday, Sunday, and Wednesday evening. So it's Saturday and Sunday morning, Wednesday evening. I'm giving you too much information probably, but if you try and do the aerobic exercise on the fourth or fifth day, it is really a slog. Meaning you feel great. I do 48 minutes because I played a lot of a game called squash. So I do 48 minutes instead of 20 minutes 3 times a week. I do 48 minutes 3 times a week. And the first 20 minutes I can do fine. But by minute 30 or 35, I am really struggling if it's my fourth or fifth day of ketosis. So I try and do the ketotic days on days 2, 3, and then by that Wednesday, I can eat again. So today is my first day of eating again.
Okay. All right.
Eating fully.
Yeah, eating fully. And can I just ask how old you are?
Sure. It's public knowledge. I'm 76 calendar years of age, and my real age, that is by doing the real age program, is around 55 and 3/4.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah. I mean, and you don't look I mean, here we are on Zoom with video. Obviously, podcast listeners won't see the video, but I mean, you don't look 76. I mean,
Thank
it's
you.
amazing.
Well, I can give you the same compliment. You don't look any place near fit. You look like 22 for people. I'm 26.
All right, thank you, thank you. All right, well, we all feel better now. And you know, my point is, over and above how we look, for me, what's important is how we feel. And very often I find how I feel reflects in how I look.
Well, that's exactly, whether you have a wrinkle on your skin or a wrinkle in your heart, it's the same process. That is weakening the junctions between the cells in your arterioles, slapping over some LDL cholesterol, having inflammation in it over time, and then it causing that blood vessel to clot. Whether that's in a heart vessel or a skin vessel, it's the same process. So, is there a difference physiologically between a heart attack and a wrinkle? No, it's the same thing. So, what you're saying, and it dilates the same way and provides you extra energy the same way. So, we think that how your skin looks, how you look and feel, reflects the inner way as well. So, I don't want to get superficial about it, but the glycosylation of skin and the of the blood vessels to your skin is the same as glycosylation of the heart vessels or the vessels to your brain.
Yeah, that is amazing. I mean, and I wouldn't have been able to say that the like all those technical, terms. I just know I feel great. I know why as well, but I mean, not to the detail that obviously as a doctor. Can we go back to the idea of epigenetics, which I think is what you were mentioning about how our genes are affected by what we eat or what we don't eat, and what we do and what we don't do. Is that right? Is that epigenetics?
Yeah, well, what is turning on or off the genes is the switches that we call epigenes. So in your nucleus, you have roughly the amount of DNA for 300,000 genes, but you've only got 22,500 according to the two human genome projects. That is both Venter in the private sphere and Collins at NIH found about 22,500. The rest of the DNA they initially called junk DNA, but it turns out it switches epigenes that control. So you have many more switches, that is, many more of the DNA base pairs that are part of your switches. And it apparently is a fairly simple reaction, methylation or demethylation of those switches, which specifically cause changes in whether your gene is on or not. All genes are protein manufacturing vehicles. That is, they're protein manufacturing plants. The genes signal to your mRNA what to align. The mRNA goes out in the cytoplasm to the amino acids and creates the protein. So, but whether that gene is read and gets to produce the protein or is skipped over is due to a lot of your choices. That is, those methylation or demethylation. Some of those occur obviously by walking and stressing a muscle. Some of those occur by stress, huge number by stress, and a huge number by your food choices and portion size. So, food is a major influencer of whether the epigenes turn on that gene or turn it off.
All right. And are the advantages as effective if we just cut down sugar, or do we have to cut it out completely, sugar and its synonyms?
I don't think we know the answer. We think it is not the overall stress sugar load, but the peak sugar that makes a difference to protein function. what makes a difference to epigenetics overall, that is to whether that nutrition changes the gene or not, or causes inflammation or not, isn't fully clear. Clearly, some of it is, do you have fat? Some of it is what the sugar does to your microbiome, and some of it is what the sugar does directly to the protein. But I don't think we know whether it is overall sugar load or peak sugar. We know that peak sugar influences insulin levels and insulin growth factor, but I don't know um, fully if we know the answer. It's a profound question you ask. So um, we've got to keep listening to your podcast, Netta, because I mean, eventually you're going to have people on who will know the answer to that question. Eventually, if NIH had spent 1/10 the money on cancer chemotherapy trials that they've spent on nutrition trials, we'd know a huge amount more about how to stay healthy. This isn't to say they shouldn't have spent it on chemotherapy trials, those are important, but it is that we haven't weighted lifestyle and lifestyle choices any place near as much in our scientific research as we maybe should have.
Yeah, and it's difficult to do really scientific studies on nutrition because it's so difficult, I guess, to just have the scientific context that you need with people eating. Like you have to lock them in a room and only give them certain
Well,
types of foods.
when I've thought about this, yeah, it is, you either lock them in a room and randomize them. You have red meat, you don't have red meat. The other easy way I've thought of doing this, how could you do this, is we have a bunch of prisoners in the United States, and you could study their aging biomarkers if they volunteered for it and give them different diets because their food is relatively controlled, or very controlled. And I'll bet they would enjoy, some of them would enjoy good food choices, and some of them might not volunteer for the randomized studies, but some of them might, and maybe enough of them would, and maybe over a 10-year period you could get results in this way. But other than that, it's very tough to do randomized nutrition studies. But as I've thought of it, I would say this is the group that I would appeal to our institutional review board and NIH to say, could we do this in an ethical way and get some ethicists involved in helping us? But that's the group I try and, because you can control pretty much food choices.
Yeah, and what I get the impression is that we consumers, I consider that I'm just a regular consumer and a teacher. I'm not in the health fields. I'm certainly miles away from being a doctor, but I found that a lot of us consumers are there saying, look, I'll just wait for one more study. I'll just read one more book, and then I'll cut sugar just to get that extra info, that extra proof. And I'm like the opposite. I'm like, just cut the sugar, and then you can read up about it, and you'll have more mental clarity to understand what you're reading anyway, but by the time you've cut sugar. But it's like, I'm not, compared to you, I'm less of a nerd, and that's a compliment to you. But I think at some point we have to put the books down and just do it.
Well, let me say you shouldn't put the books down because science keeps getting better, evolving, better techniques, better technology. Um, and I'll give you the example. The Human Genome Project cost 2.7 billion to get the SNPs in your genome. Now those same SNPs are available for about $300, unless you can get on a sale. And at Walmart in the U.S., you can get them for maybe $100 on a sale week. So 3 billion down to, or 2 billion, 2.7 billion down to maybe 300 is a huge huge reduction and improvement in technology. And science keeps getting better, and we learn more because of that. So don't put the books down, but take the preponderance of data. We knew in 1994, which is when I quit red meat, we knew that, and I got challenged by a patient, is why I learned it then, because the data were available before then, that red meat and processed red meat age you. We didn't know why till 2009. It's because carnitine, lecithin, and choline, when combined with saturated fat, change the gene function of the bacteria inside you to produce an inflammatory substance. But we didn't know that for probably 30 years after we knew those were bad for you. So the point is, we could, and I did, and hopefully influence many other people to make the choice to eliminate red meat and processed red meat because of what it does. So before the science is complete, you can say the preponderance of data indicates, and I will change behavior if the data change. So, if you will, I didn't know that artificial sweeteners in Diet Dr. Pepper were really bad, and I waited till around 2010 to quit diet soft drinks. Was that wrong on my part? Well, you can say the preponderance of data wasn't there till around 2010. So the point is, as science evolves, you can make changes. But when the preponderance of data is there, as it is with sugar, I think that you're doing the right thing, having life after sugar.
Thank you. Thank you. And it's lovely to hear a doctor saying, I didn't know. All the credit goes to you, because you can't know it all. And the important thing, in my opinion, as a teacher as well, is to be open to learning more, but not to let that sort of quest for information stop you from actually taking action.
I totally agree. Totally agree.
Cool.
So, if you will, all we have on a lot of things like processed red meat, if you will, egg yolks, is a real preponderance of data and studies in animals. We don't have the randomized studies in humans yet, but we'll get them. We also, if you will, my own feeling on some of the other things has changed. I used to think that milk was really bad. I'm not sure that dairy products are bad anymore. As we've learned more about, it isn't saturated fat. It is saturated fat when combined with lecithin, choline, and carnitine that change the bacteria to produce something inflammatory in you. So, and milk has some great protein combinations. So, I think where the preponderance of data changes, or you can change behavior. So I keep learning new things, if you will.
Fantastic.
That's joy, and that's really the joy of living younger for longer, is our curiosity. I really believe that with 14 shots on goal, we will have a great age reboot. That's why I've done the Reboot Your Age app, because I really think that we should be prepared for it. And my curiosity is, I want to live the next 10 years, because I think sometime in this 10 years, we'll know whether one of those shots on goal gets through, and we're likely to get a lot younger for longer.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I'm going to put that information in the show notes with this episode. And I just want to thank you for taking the time to talk to me today. And I think our listeners will be really inspired by what you have to say.
Netta, thank you. And if I can ask you, as you know, I'm going to invite you. I've got a podcast too, the Owner's Manual podcast, and I need you to come on that show. You're so good. So I appreciate it, and if you'd come on too.
With pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you.
What a great chat with Dr. Roizen. It's wonderful to speak to an expert and a doctor who is humble enough to recognize that he doesn't know everything and that there's still plenty for him and for us as consumers to learn. I'll put his information, including his app and his podcast, in the show notes below this episode. And if you're looking for some free resources to help you cut sugar and enjoy the real sweetness in your life, then I have some for you on the Life After Sugar Facebook page, the Life After Sugar YouTube channel, and come and subscribe to my Instagram account at My Life After Sugar. You'll find recipes, inspiration, and sugar-free tips in all of those free resources, as well as on my website, aftersugarclub.com. And that's where you'll be able to join the After Sugar Club, which is where you'll get all the support, the accountability, the insight, and the encouragement you need to make your intermittent fasting lifestyle easier and your cravings disappear when you cut sugar. You probably know that cutting sugar has many benefits, but how to live happily sugar-free is a challenge for many people, and maybe it is for you too. So if you need help and support and guidance and accountability to get there, then join the After Sugar Club. Go to aftersugarclub.com and click on the green button to join the club. Thank you for listening. That's it for this week. Keep in touch and see you soon for another episode.